Hello, music people. Today I'm going to be talking about the difference between a pianist and a keyboardist. Yes, there is a difference. As a pianist, when you sit down at a piano, you don't really have to think very much about timbre. That's because the timbre of a piano is quite fixed. You can play a piano even if you've never seen it before, and you can have a reasonable expectation about what it's going to sound like. I have a piano sound up here on this keyboard. You play a piano, it sounds like a piano. Yes, there are timbral differences from one piano to the next, right? If you're playing a grand piano versus an upright piano, or you might notice that a piano is out of tune and you'll say, oh, I have to call the piano tuner. But in that moment, there's nothing that you can do to alter the timbre of that instrument. It's fixed. You play middle C on a piano, it's going to sound like a piano playing middle C. And so the only thing that you're really thinking about as a pianist is the music that you are making using your fingers on the keys. And I guess also your foot on the sustain pedal if you're using the sustain pedal. And when you take piano lessons, you are learning how to use your fingers on the piano to make music. You're learning proper fingering and technique. You're learning about sight reading. You might be learning about how to read lead sheets or how to improvise. All of these things relate to the music that you make with your fingers. But if you're a keyboardist, you need to think about all of those same things, plus you need to think about timbre. Because as a keyboardist, you have virtually unlimited options at your disposal in terms of the different timbres and sounds that you can use. And as a pianist approaching a keyboard, you might just be comfortable bringing up a piano sound like this one and sticking with that. And depending on the ensemble that you're in and the repertoire that you're doing, that may work and that might be perfectly appropriate. But a keyboard also imitates other acoustic instruments, other electronic instruments. There are some synthesizer type sounds. There are otherworldly type sounds. There's so many options available, and those other kinds of sounds might be more appropriate than just using a piano sound. You need to think about what your role is in the band that you're playing. Your role is going to depend on the style, the songs, who the other band members are and what they're doing. You'll suddenly have to do a bit more thinking about, what frequency range even am I going to play in? Should I be playing down here, up there? And those decisions are going to be affected by what sound you're using, because some sounds sound better higher or lower. And it is much more difficult, I think, to get training in these kinds of areas when it comes to figuring out your role as a keyboardist, choosing the right sound for the right song, going in and finding a good sound on that keyboard and maybe editing it, creating a custom sound or a custom layer or split keyboard. Those aren't commonly topics that are discussed in piano or keyboard lessons, and yet it's really important. In fact, in a lot of cases, I think it's even more important to be thinking about those sorts of things than some of the more traditional focuses of piano lessons. And there is a number of different sounds that I can draw up on this keyboard in order to demonstrate the importance of thinking about timbre and listening to the sound that you're playing with a critical ear. But the one I'm going to use today is a Hammond organ sound. This is the classic sound that is used in a lot of different styles, and lots of people who play keyboard will want to use Hammond organ sounds. Some keyboards do a Hammond organ sounds better than others. I think this particular keyboard does an okay job with Hammond sounds. Now, one thing that I find as a general rule when it comes to playing Hammond organ sounds on keyboards is that typically you will want to play a Hammond sound an octave higher from where you would normally play the piano. Because, and I'll show you, that might sound good on a piano sound. I just played a C major chord. If I switch to a Hammond sound, play the same chord, same notes, that sounds muddy. That sounds dirty. It's too low. I should be playing it an octave higher. But if you're a pianist and you're not really used to listening to timbre with a critical ear, you might just play this out of habit and not really realize or think, gee, does that sound good, or would it sound better if it was up here? Maybe it'd sound better if it was all the way up there. Right? The other thing to bear in mind is that a Hammond organ does not have a sustain pedal, and a piano does. As pianists, you might be used to using a sustain pedal, and you might use it when you're using a Hammond organ sound. That's completely inappropriate. It's not going to sound like a realistic Hammond organ if you're using a sustain pedal. It won't sound right. It'll sound ridiculous, in my opinion. So don't use a sustain pedal when you are using a Hammond organ sound. And so this is just one example of the kind of thinking that really needs to go into your playing as a keyboardist. And so I hope this video has been helpful, and I will see you next time.